Yeah, we're live. It is 7:29, so a little late. Hopefully everybody's doing well tonight. We want to talk about 100 horsepower head swap. So how do you get 100 horsepower from a cylinder head upgrade? And certainly possible. And we're going to talk about the mechanics of how you make that happen, because it's not universal. You're not going to get, like, I'm going to, if I replace the stock head on my Sprint Turbo with a ported head, or if they had some sort of aftermarket head, am I going to get 100 horsepower? No, that's not going to happen. In fact, I would argue that probably on most applications, you're not going to get the 100 horsepower thing, but it makes for a good headline. It makes for a good, YouTube kind of thing to get, it's good clickbait or whatever. But the thing is, I don't put stuff up there for clickbait. There has to be a reality, it has to be based in reality. And it definitely is. And the answer to how do you get like big power gains is really twofold. Obviously, if you're going to try to make power, the cylinder head that you're putting on has to be good. So it has to support the power. So like if we look at the LS side, we have to do, we have to look at, hey, do we have enough cylinder head to support the power level? Do we have a ported head? Are there ported heads that flow a ton and can make the power? Yes, they are. We're going to look at the other side of that in just a second. So if you're looking at some power level, whatever power level that is 100 horsepower more than what you have, whatever that power level is, the cylinder heads that you're putting on have to be able to support that. And not only like just be able to support that, they have to be able to support that. So the word support is in capital letters there. And it's actually better in most every situation that the cylinder heads that you put on don't just have, just enough to support it. They have it covered by a lot. So like if you're just trying to make 500 horsepower, if you put 600 horsepower heads on there, it makes life a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier to get those kinds of gains. So it works out pretty well. The other end of the spectrum, the way that you make that work is obviously the heads have to be able to support that level of power, but there's two other things. One, the rest of the motor has to be able to also support that power. So if you put heads on that, flow 300 CFM and they'll support 600 horsepower, but you put them on an otherwise stock motor and you compare it to even stock heads, you're not going to get there. You're not going to get the gain that you want because the rest of the motor doesn't need that head flow. So you have to have a motor that has the other things that now wants to take advantage of the head flow. Essentially, you have to set the test up so that the last thing that you're comparing are the cylinder heads. And so you've created a motor that now needs cylinder heads. So it has enough displacement, it has enough compression, it has enough camshaft, it has enough intake manifold. If it's a carbureted motor, it has enough carburetor, has a big enough throttle body, has long tube headers on it. Basically has all of the other boxes checked. And the one glaring omission there does not have enough cylinder head. It has stock cylinder heads, but it has all the other things. That's the situation. So it has to have that. The other situation that helps you get the really big power gain is if you start off with, when that unchecked box, it has factory cylinder heads. Those factory cylinder heads are really terrible to begin with. They're not great. They don't flow well. They don't support a lot of power. So there are a lot of engine families that are like that have lackluster heads. I was having this conversation or this discussion with somebody about the Dodge heads, and we discussed that the other night about the small block Dodge heads, the small block Chevy heads. But actually, both of those are better than the small block Ford Windsor heads. So if you look at a 260 or a 289, a 221, if you look at it, you look at any of those Windsor heads, 302s, the 351s, there's only one or two decent sets of factory Windsor heads. One being the legendary 69 351 Windsor heads, which I think are basically like the GT40 heads or the GT40P heads. So in the long line of, Ford running these Windsor-based combinations, there's only those two heads, and they're not that good. Neither one of those, being the best ones that they offer, neither one of those are anywhere near what a set of Fuelie heads are for the VORTECH heads for the small block Chevy. And I don't think either one of them are what an X or a J head is for the big valve stuff for the small block Fords or the Magnum heads. I don't think that any of them And then the stock ones like E head or E6TE or any of the stock head 9s, whatever, none of those heads flow very well. None of them in stock form flow good at all. In fact, like if you look at a 5-liter Mustang head, and I think that others kind of follow suit here, you're looking at 150 or 60 CFM. So relatively speaking, they're horrible. I mean, if you look at a small block Chevy Fuelie head or a VORTECH, that's 200 plus. And so it's a big jump up. It's better. Now the GT40P head is between those two. It's probably like 170 or 180, somewhere in that range. Definitely better than the stock head, but not even as good as a Fuelie head. So we're starting off with, in our situation, in the test that I did where we gained 100 horsepower, we're starting off with the stock head, which is horrible. It doesn't flow well. It doesn't make good power. And then we're putting an Airflow Research 185 head on it, which is, back when we tested it, probably was kind of the cream of the crop for a bolt-on Windsor head for that application. We also had a stroker version of a 302. I think it was a 331. And then it had a good RPM air gap style intake manifold, had a 650 or 750 carburetor, had long tube headers on it. So it was a displacement. It had compression. It had the 274 cam in it. It had enough camshaft for what we were doing. And basically, like I said, all of the boxes were checked. And then we just didn't have enough cylinder head. And so we took off the wildly mediocre stock E7TE heads and put on the Airflow Research 185 heads. Now, they're also aluminum, so it's a better thing. I mean, the iron heads for a small block Chevy are not, or for a small block Ford, are not that heavy to begin with, but you get the benefit of an aluminum head. You get extra flow, you get extra power, and you get less weight. So it's like it's like the kind of triple win thing here going on. And probably less susceptible to detonation, even though they're making, I question that, because they're certainly making, they made way more power and more torque, didn't lose anything even down at 2,500 RPM. They were just basically better everywhere. But them producing more torque, I wonder if them being aluminum, you think right away, okay, they're going to be less susceptible to detonation run on pump gas, but they are making more torque, more cylinder pressure. Would that make them more susceptible? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just kind of asking those questions out loud. But this test met those three criteria for, upgrading the cylinder head. If we were to look at and compare that to, okay, we're going to take a 4.8 or a 5.3 and we're going to take off the stock heads and upgrade them with some other good ported heads, we're not going to get 100 horsepower. And we have a good enough motor, like we could do a cam 5.3 with a good intake manifold, a fast and stuff on it. I don't think we're going to get 100 horsepower from that for a couple of reasons. One is that the stock heads, and this is the biggest thing, the stock heads are already good. I mean, the stock heads already flow 230, 240. If they're a 799 head, 250. So they're already way better than any of those other stock heads that we talked about. Certainly way better than a factory Ford head by 70, 80 CFM per runner. It's quite a bit. And so because of that, they were already making good power, enough for a cammed 5.3 anyway with a stock head. You can pick up power from ported heads, definitely, but it isn't till you really start winding this thing out and running lots of RPM and running more compression, more displacement, all those things, where you can really take advantage of the heads. So in that situation, even though you could certainly put on a set of ported LS heads that flow more than a 185 small block Ford head, they just don't have the other things that they need to take advantage of a 300 plus CFM cylinder head. They don't have the rest of the things to make 600 plus horsepower because the motor's too small. They don't have enough of all of those things. So you don't get the same kind of gains, even though the heads, relatively speaking, are better. But on the small block Ford, we started off with something that was no good. We put on something that was really good. And then we also had, all of the other things that we needed. So it worked out much better. So that's how we get those very big power gains. And there might be other applications, other engine families that had, mediocre heads. And if we look at some of these things, like, if we look at a Pontiac, which I know is not 455, it will always be a big block Pontiac to me. But if we look at a situation like that, where we have a 455 Pontiac that doesn't have good head flow, and then we put good head flow on it, it being that big, especially if we had one that didn't have 8-to-1 compression, that wasn't a factory one, that had good compression, that's a situation where, because you have so much more motor and you have, relatively speaking, lackluster cylinder heads, that you do a head swap on, and you can pick up a ton of power. So there are other applications out there that are like that, that are essentially home runs for cylinder heads. And then I think it makes the pill of the cost of this sort of cylinder head upgrade easier to swallow. Because if you have to spend $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, or whatever the cost of the cylinder heads are, and the associated things they have to change with it, like, if you're going to buy head bolts or head studs and head gaskets and stuff, and if you're going to do all that, it can get quite pricey. But when you get 100 horsepower from it, that's a good deal. If you only get 20 or 30 horsepower gain from it, that's a little harder to justify for that kind of expense. But 100 horsepower is like a good round number, and that's exactly, well, we got 98 horsepower, I think. So but I rounded up to 100, but because it sounds like a bigger number, it sounds a lot better. But it is easier to justify to ourselves more than anything else that, yeah, I spent that money, but I got 100 horsepower, so it's worthwhile. And the other thing is that not only did you get the 100 horsepower, but the combination that we tested that on was hardly like any sort of, race-oriented motor. It's more of a street-oriented thing. And so you have room to grow with that particular, like those 185 heads will support a lot more power than we made. They'll support probably another 100 horsepower if you wanted to go that route with compression and camshaft and a tunnel ram and all kinds of fun stuff. You have room to go do that now. And so that's something to think about when you're putting the heads on. The easy, cheap way on a small block Ford upgrade is to go get GT40 or GT40P heads from the wrecking yard. But those don't allow you a whole bunch of growth, like an airflow research head, even a Renegade head. But certainly the CNC stuff will allow you lots of room to grow. So if you get that, it's nice to know, hey, look, I'm not stuck right here. I got another 100 horsepower to play with. And yes, they are turbo heads. They also work under boost, as as all the cylinder heads do. Okay, we'll see what you guys got going on. It's a head swap. That has horsepower. Worth the, I don't know, we'll say, I'm going to say 2,000. Price of the heads. In fact, let's look that up before I put that on there. There. Airflow research, Renegade heads. Yeah, it's going to be for that. It's going to be too large. Okay, is a head swap that adds 100 horsepower worth the $2,000 price of the heads? Is 100 horsepower for $2,000? Is that like a doable thing? Let's see what you guys got going on. Danny, Aaron, what's going on? Hello, everyone. Love the content as always. Nothing but great knowledge. Happy to help. I have recently found a set of Boss 302 heads buried in someone's shop. That's cool. Exactly. If you build an engine for high horsepower but have stock heads on it, you can make gains like this. Yep. Do you mean a stock 302 or say a Stroker 347, put 225 airflows or GT40P heads on it? Well, 225s probably wouldn't be a good choice for a 302 or even a 347. I'd go with something smaller than that. Valve angle and valve job angle matter a huge amount. Yeah, different kinds of valve jobs can definitely change the power output. I traded some work for a set of used TFS Twisted Wedge 170s, the OG ones. Nice. My block is waiting for the machine shop So I had to join when I saw a topic. Those are good heads. I like those. They sold a lot of those twisted wedge heads, and those are good. Those are a good upgrade. Those are more like a twisted wedge head. The as cast one is more like what a factory 706 or 862, even maybe 799 head flow. What an LS head is essentially. It's like putting an LS head on a Ford 302. Did you guys see the Artemis 2 launch? I just saw it on social media. But that's cool that they're going to the moon. Those TFS heads were pretty good at the time. I remember telling the then marketing director of TrickFlow, I think it was either TrickFlow, it might have been Summit. I think it was Summit. And he said, well, what if we came out with a set of heads that were aluminum and, flowed nearly 100 CFM more than a stock head, and they were less than $1,000. I said, you'd only sell 6 or 8 million of those, I think. He goes, oh, that's good. That's kind of what I want to hear. Do you have a favorite head manufacturer? Nope, I don't have favorites really. I test them all. GM is the only company with cars on the moon. Did they do the lander or the rover or whatever it's called? I was able to get my port on my Brodix BR7 over 430 at 800 lift. Never went turbulent. Nice. Do you have a cam are you running a cam that's going to be up there? TrickFlow heads always made the most power, biggest power curve for the least amount of money. Richard called them the best bang for the buck and the first of his E7 TE heads versus the World Dyno. They were, when I did that head test, I think we put in cost of those. So the TrickFlow heads, the as cast ones, were probably pretty good deals. Because I think when I did it, I think one of the many things that I did, that was so much work, was we did the power gains relative to the cost. So I think that the TrickFlow heads were a good value for that. Artemis, has anybody seen the Hotel Artemis? Have you seen that show, the movie? I put TrickFlow heads on my Chevy and Ford engines. I've run them on a lot of stuff. I really like the TrickFlow heads, the Super 23s on the 305 Chevy that I did. All the TrickFlow stuff seemed to work good on the 5 liters. Is there a Hemi style Ford heads from the 1960s? I don't know about a Hemi style, but you obviously could put the Yates or Cleveland style heads on the Windsors also. I just picked an LS. They all have good aluminum heads. They do. The answer to that survey question will be 80 to 90% yes. It's 80 right now. Lunar rover will be found missing its wheels and instruments. Will it be up on blocks, moon blocks? One was to assemble 11 to 1, 347. Around what RPM do you think twisted wedge 179 heads would run out of steam, non-11 Rs? Well, if they're stock ones, they'll support somewhere near 500, depending on all the other things that you have on the motor. But on the 347s that we put together, usually more like 450 is where they come out to be. Unimported ones. My 3.6 liter Dodge minivan, factory rated at 285. That's a lot. I like to get it into a terrifying 325. What size turbo would I need? How many pounds of boost? Ring gap? Yes, ring gap if you're going to add boost. But if you're only talking about adding 40 horsepower, that's like a pound of boost. That's nothing. So let's do the math on it. 285 divided by 14.7. So you're at about 19 horsepower per pound. So you're talking about 2 pounds of boost. So my guess is that you're going to be more like, let's see, 285 times 1.5. You're going to be more like 425. Maybe you meant 425 because that would be about 7 pounds. Jet Black and Alpha's here. Wrote in the dust on it. I have the fastest cast 170 twisted wedge heads on my Ford right now. Those are good. I like those. I had the original twisted or trick flow high port heads, and I had the TFS KPI Kaufman products. I had those that was cast into them. I had an early set. I think I remember David Visor saying he gets 75 horsepower from porting VORTECH heads for 377 and 383 strokers, but porters as good as David are few and far between. Yeah, I don't remember what the VORTECH head's probably like 210 CFM or something like that. So I think that you could get. I haven't seen a set of really gone after ported set of those heads to see what they flow, but I would imagine they could pick those up. Watch the launch live. The ported stock heads. My Dakota work well on 5.7 Hemi. Yeah, the early Hemis you could port and they work really well. I would imagine that the later Apache and Eagle stuff also responds to porting. How did I learn people are going to the moon from a hot riding live feed? I had no idea. See, we do it all. We talk about Bigfoot. We talk about flying saucers. We talk about space launches. $20 per horsepower for the pole. Totally worth it if you're staying NA. With room to grow. I'm in Florida, but it was cloudy, so I had to watch the launch on YouTube. Hey, man, I've got a 1974 F100 302 small block, stock bottom end. I upgraded to P93 bar heads. I'm thinking that those are GT40Ps. Valve job running trick flow springs to support a hydraulic retrofit cam. Okay, that's all good. 100 horsepower is not worth 2K. It's a lot. No matter how you slice it, that's a lot of money. Cam is pretty mild. 216. I'm also running 1.5 rockers. You're running 1.5 rockers on a 302 Ford? An air gap, 670 Street Avenger, long tubes, full flow masters. Spaceship fuel for the extra horsepower. Are they using is it hydrogen peroxide? Is that what the jet fuel or the space shuttle fuel is, or the rocket fuel? I built a 410 Windsor stroker with a single plane, long tubes, using 185s. Are those heads too small for the combination I have? It depends on how much power you want. What are your thoughts on the combo in terms of overall drivability and reliability? Do you think that cam duration is a good match for the setup? Would you change anything? No, I wouldn't. That's going to be a good driver. That should work good. Stock 460 heads with bigger valves flow better than buying aftermarket heads. I don't think that that's the case. I think that Kazi and all of the Super Cobra Jet stuff, I think, would have something to say about that. Well, simply pinning the stock crank on an LS suffice for running a YSI V7 supercharger. Yeah, what I would do, though, is I would pin it on both sides 180 degrees apart. And then I would worry about, are you doing it with a truck damper? We've broke a few of those. So I'd be a little concerned about that. Running the flamethrower 2 system, forgot to say. What's a flamethrower 2 system? Is it something that shoots flames? Because that's awesome if it is. What engine would heads provide 100 horsepower? Don't a lot of new engines have heads that can almost outflow the displacement capabilities? What we talked about earlier at the beginning of this was how you make that happen. It was on a small block Ford. On my 331, the engine's on the FR 185s and 408, and the car has the FR 205s. Yeah, those are good choices for those. Ford 5-liter uses 1.6 rocker arms. Yes, it does. Hermes uses liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. Okay, cool. Why was I thinking hydrogen peroxide? Maybe just the hydrogen part of that. The booster rockets are solid fuel. This isn't V8 related. It's all good. We could talk about Honda stuff too, or whatever. But in Australia, we have the single cam RB30 turbo, came out of the Holden BL turbo. I'm running a GTX 3582. Boost response is down. Should I change the cam? What are you running, a stock long runner intake on that? And a GTX 35 on a 4-liter This is a Barra motor, right? Oh, an RB. Okay, never mind. So GTX 3582 is probably an 800 horsepower turbo. How much power are you trying to make? If you're trying to make 400 or 500, then probably a 3076 or something would be better. LH2 and LOX just had to get pointed at each other, and you get liquid for free. Flamethrower 2 replaces points. Oh, okay. I've seen those. Yeah, the electronic ignition upgrades. I did an Excel. What was it? No. It was a Mallory Unilite back in my Camaro days. How much head can you run the street without sacrificing drivability? Is there such a thing as too much head flow? I don't think you have to worry about that. I don't know what application you have, but I don't know what head you would be thinking about that would be too much. Like, we've run 225 heads on a 302. It's not necessary, but it did. Are you coming in? But it didn't kill the bottom end. That doesn't do that. The cylinder heads don't do that nearly as much as people think. Like, you could hurt the bottom end way more with an intake manifold and way more with a camshaft than you can with cylinder heads. The V7 requires a 10 rib pulley, so we're going to use an aftermarket balancer. They'll accept the pulley for the supercharger. Okay, so you're going to put an ATI dampener more than likely on it. So the ATI, the way that they pin theirs is different. When you're pinning a factory one, you drill into the front of it, and so it's got a half moon notch on the crank and then a half moon notch on the damper, and then you slide a pin in. On the ATI, you're going to drill in perpendicular to the crankshaft and down into the hollow part of it, and you're going to put a dowel in there, a solid dowel. And the dowel lines up on a typical slotted crank or a slotted damper, like you would have put on a keyed small block Chevy. And so it goes in there, and then the bolt holds that dowel up, and the dowel, goes in that keyed section, and then stops the thing from spinning. I don't think you'll be able to do two of those 180 degrees out, because the ATI doesn't have another keyed slot 180 degrees out. But I have seen guys drill and tap and put two of those dowels in the same spot, like right next to each other. Give a little bit of room though, because you don't want them to like break together. Richard, I'm doing a 5.3 LS9 cam, twin 76 turbos. What boost should I run and keep it in one piece? Okay, first of all, I would want to talk you out of your combination. Like, how much power are you trying to make? Because in my opinion, you have completely the wrong cam on there, and you have way too much turbo for what I think you're trying to do. You'd be way better off with a better camshaft and much smaller turbos to have the thing be responsive and fun on the street. What's the name of a coil flamethrower? I have a stock 87 5-liter. I just got a set of World Product Windsor heads that just came out of the machine shop. Ford Motorsport F303 cam. Do you think that will work with correct springs? Yeah, that'll work fine. The Windsor heads that you have, are the World Product heads iron? Or because they also made some aluminum versions of those, like Windsor Juniors. I'm the one that built the 410 stroker. I'm looking to get 550 to 575. Is that unreasonable? That's not an unreasonable amount to get out of a 410 stroker, but I don't think you're going to get that with, was this the one with the ASCAT heads? Have you ever taken a look at the super cheap cylinder heads? I'm looking at the VORTECH small block Ford heads. They seem all right. Well, I don't, the only thing that you think that makes them all right, I'm sure, is the price. Because we don't know anything about the casting process. We don't know anything about the metallurgy. We don't know anything about whether or not the valve seats are going to stay in place, whether they're concentric, what the valve to guide clearance is. I mean, how the springs are. We just don't know any of that. Now, maybe they're right. Maybe they're good. But I don't know that for sure because I haven't ever tried those. Standard custom forward-facing intake plenum. It's an RB30. Okay. But the plenum I'm not concerned with. I think people talk about plenum stuff a lot. And I was watching a YouTube thing with experts talking about plenums. And I'm like, I think you're talking about the wrong thing. But the runner length has a big effect on response rate for the turbo. Speak of other guys, what would it take to get a golf cart engine to run 45 to 50 miles an hour, better aero? Well, which engine are you talking about? Are you talking about a gas one or electric one? Steve Brule had done a bunch of stuff to his electric engine and the batteries and all that stuff on his cart. Lithium batteries are better controller. They do it all the time in golf carts. Yeah, that's what Steve was going through. The World product ones are iron heads. Okay, those are still better than stock heads. First, golf carts don't have engines. They have motors, up the volts and amps. That's not correct. You have gas-powered golf carts also, and I would argue that both of them can be engines or motors. Some of gas engines. Yeah, okay, we went through that. Long runners. Okay. Anyone ever pick up a 302 in a 4-cylinder Mustang or 49? Anyone ever put a 302? Yeah, lots of people put 302s in 4-cylinder Mustangs. That was a pretty common swap. Motor versus engine, yeah. Running 85 is good. Have you done any testing on 394 engines? I haven't. I've never run an FE. I've been there when Robert Pond was doing some 482 stroker FE stuff for Cobras, but they were all aluminum blocks and aluminum heads and stuff, and so they were, and stack injection and stuff, and so they were really high-end things, but I've never run one. How do you tell if your pistons are forged or not? Is there a way by looking at them? I was told the piston in my engine were not forged. What engine is it? And a lot of times you can tell by the part number on the piston. Excuse me. At what point, if any, do you start to think about the issue of 8.2 deck small for roller block splitting? Is there anything you could pay extra attention to during the build? I don't think so. I think where it splits, if it's weak there, I've had people tell me all kinds of different things. I had even the guy sent me over things, said, oh yeah, I've been making 900 horsepower for, I don't know, 10 years or 20 years or whatever. And he's been racing it and stuff, and said that there's nothing that's not really a thing, but we've split them. So I don't think that there's anything that you could do to stop them from splitting. Can you please do some testing on RBs? I have 2 of them at the thing, but I'm actually giving them back to the guy that let me borrow them. No landing plan for moon orbit mission. Are they going to go and see the dark side of the moon? What cam would you run on the 5.3 LS, and what turbos do you recommend? Well, I need to know, first of all, what power level you want. How much power are you trying to make with that? And then, like, what are you going to do with it? Are you drag racing it? Are you just driving it around? Are you doing street strip? Are you doing no prep? What are you doing with it? And then we'll decide on a combination that I think will work well. Is the Holley high ram EFI on Ford 357 and 80 millimeter turbo ball bearing have good response with that intake? A 357 with an 80 millimeter turbo and a 236 cam is probably not going to have good boost response. But it's not going to be because of the high ram. The high ram is going to be one of the things that is going to limit response compared to a long runner style manifold. The big camshaft is also going to do that. And then the 80 millimeter turbo is also going to do that, depending on what your desired power output is. And then I don't know if it's an automatic. If you have a converter in it, maybe that's not going to be an issue. Have you ever run 1.7 rockers with a 274 cam, thinking about trying it? Yeah, but I don't know what you're going to gain. It's already fairly high lift, and I don't know what the rest of your combination is. I'd say try it, but we like trying that stuff on the dyno as long as we have piston valve clearance and retainer to seal, and I'll make sure that we have enough clearance to run the extra lift that we're trying to do there. And see if it works, and then see if it makes more power. But I don't know that that's something that I would try just out on the street without having any way to measure it. 302 forward, 30 over. The guy that swapped the X303 or E303 to the X303 said the pistons were not forged. Okay. Can you see the pistons? Like, is the head off of it? I just picked up a new Marketplace TSP 231 246 cam. On an LS1, what would you suggest for heads that won't break the bank? It has stock 241s. I think the best bet probably is to get the ones that you have ported. Is probably the cheapest way. If you convert a cylinder's cubic inches to cc's, does that give you the close estimate of compression ratio if they know the cc's of the combustion chamber? You're looking for swept volume. So you're looking for what the volume is with the piston at the bottom versus the piston at the top. As long as you have all of those measurements, but most people don't have that. Two kinds of measuring systems in the world, one from people who put men on the moon and one used by everyone else. Pretty sharp people. Gen 6, 454, 248, 254, Edelbrock Victor Jr., 750, double pumper, factory oval ports. I think it can make 550. I think the carburetor might be a little on the small side for that, but yeah, probably with that cam, as long as you have, I'm assuming that you have, what pistons do you have in it and what kind of compression is it? Because if you have a 248 cam in it, you have something other than stock pistons in there, right? Golf carts and gasser. They're going to fly around the moon and come back. 900 to 1,000 for street use on the 5.3 automatic transmission, 3,000 stalled. Okay, yeah, I wouldn't pick those turbos. I wouldn't pick that camshaft. What you can do to get 1,000 horsepower is a 5.3 with ring gap, stock heads, springs, one of our cams, or any of a number of other camshafts, the low buck truck camshaft, the Truck Plus camshaft, a BTR, Truck Norris, get something small. Get the right size single turbo or twins. If you're going to get twins, get two small ones like our 3076s would be way better than 276 millimeters. They would be infinitely more responsive than that. I would just pick a single, like a single G42, if that fits. If you wanted to do twins, do our twin 3076s for that, and then that will do it. And that will easily, and it'll go more than 1,000 if you wanted to do that. How about a Big Bang Godzilla? I don't have a Godzilla. Foreheads never had problems structurally and can be modified according to application to accommodate a much cheaper 100 horsepower game size. Getting pretty, it's definitely not worth it. I don't know what you mean by that. You're going to port a stock E7TE head to gain 100 horsepower? I would trade for electric cart, much easier to modify for speed. If you're going to change the cam anyway, why not just get a cam that does what you want instead of getting 1.7 rockers to exaggerate the cam? You can do that. The Extreme Energy 274 cam already has a lot of lift. It's like 540, 550, 560. It's a dual pattern thing. So it has plenty of lift. I don't know that going up closer to 600 lift is going to benefit you. Because I don't know that you're under cammed or under lifted on a lot of those applications. Don't get me started on motor engine, Ford Motor Company, GM, Motorsports, motorcycle. Yeah, no, I went through that again today. I went through that with the 400M. I posted a thing on the 400M, and I told people, I said, look, flat out, I'm going to call it a 400M. So if you don't like that, then don't like it. That's okay. And a 455 Pontiac is a big block Pontiac. You could not like that. That's fine. And I don't care about your motor and engine thing. I don't care about any of that. It is what it is. My daily driver is a 2015 Volvo. Nice. Runs high 13 stock, turbocharged straight 6, 300 horsepower. Would raising the boost a little be a good idea? Yeah, they probably, Kurt, don't they have programmers or something for those? I would think that they would. Seen some pretty bad small block foreheads. Yeah, I had a Hypo 289, and they're like, "Oh, dude, you got the Hypo heads on them." I'm like, yeah, they're the same as every other head. They're awful. They don't flow well, and it doesn't really make any power. How many pounds of boost can you run on a stock 6-liter LS 317s with just a cam swap? Well, if you put ring gap in it, we ran 30 pounds on a stock bottom end. So you probably don't want to do that, but you can run a lot. Internal combustion engine can be either an engine or a motor. If it's electric, it's a motor. And if it's a 2026 F1, it's both. Have you played with Subaru motors? I haven't. I've driven a Subaru, a racing WRX, but I didn't have anything to do with the engine build. I'm with you. I'm going to call it 400M. The thing about a 400M, when you say that it's a 400M, everybody knows what it is. When you tell them it's a 400, oh, you mean like the 351M? Yeah, I'm just going to say it's a 400M. I did Subarus. They kick rods out if you weren't careful. Can we call it 400C? It's not really a Cleveland because it doesn't have the same bell housing. It does have Cleveland heads on it, but it has 335 bell housing on it. It's got like a 460 bell housing on it. But that was my point in the posting that I did today. It was, what are the good things about it and what are the bad things about it? It's a new series I'm doing on different engines because everything has a good side and a bad side. There's good things that we like about it and things that we don't like about it. Every engine ever made. And so I was talking about the 400 and I said, well, look, first of all, it's 400 inches and it takes Cleveland heads, making it a stroker Cleveland essentially. The bad side of that is that it's a tall deck one. And so there's no intake manifolds for it, or very few intake manifolds for it. You also maybe have longer connecting rods and longer push rods and stuff, which that can kind of limit things. But you can put Cleveland intake manifolds on there if you put the spacers on there. JR Racing works best in US Imperial. 200 meters, no prep is wrong. I've got a Subaru EJ that's spun 2 rod bearings. Didn't even lose the oil pressure. Messed around and got an Acura yesterday. Nice. Is it an NSX? That J series is pretty peppy. Stock is best when VTEC kicks in. Yeah. I'm a big fan. Knock on cold start after sitting weeks. Porsche 914. What engine would you swap or keep? My dad left me one. I've been debating what to do. Actually, I think a Porsche 914, if you just put it back together, is now a fairly expensive car. But I've seen a lot of small block Chevys in them, but I wouldn't do that. An aluminum LS seems like a way better way to go. Or even a K series or a J series, some sort of aluminum thing. Richard, when porting your own heads, I don't do that. How critical is it to flow bench test for each cylinder? Is there an acceptable tolerance? It depends on how good you are. If you're really good and been porting for a long time, those guys probably can make them do the same thing to all of them. I mean, a CNC does that by design, but good guys, I'm sure, can do that. I can't do that. I'm not a porter anyways. And that whole kilowatt versus horsepower thing, don't get me started on Fig Newton meters. That's right. Fig Newton, Cam Newton, Olivia Newton, Sir Isaac Newton. What do you use to monitor knock? We don't normally on the dyno. We can use on factory ECUs. We can monitor knock. And sometimes when they hook up the Holley, they'll run the factory knock sensors. But I don't do that on the engine dyno. I just know where it's going to knock and not going to knock. 914.6 is good, yeah. A 914.6, but the 6 needs to be not Porsche 6. It needs to be some other kind of affordable 6. In your 408 small block Ford, would you recommend a 2.5-inch log style exhaust manifold set or 3-inch log style exhaust manifold? Does it matter? I would recommend long tube headers if you can. Put a Tesla Plaid drivetrain in it. That would also work. Comp says that cam will fit with factory pistons on a Gen 6 454. A 248 cam will fit on a Gen 6 454? I don't think that's happening. I say you run into trouble in the 230s on a Gen 6 454. And also it's not going to fit the stock cylinder heads. It's not going to fit the retainer to seal clearance. It's not going to fit the stock springs. I mean, you're definitely going to have to put springs and retainers, and you have to change the retainer to seal clearance. I don't think a 248 cam fits. I was thinking about texting you and telling you congratulations on your speed parts company. Very proud, happy for you. Wasn't sure that you had the same number. I try to put a Goldwing engine in a 914. There's a guy on YouTube. Well, if you're going to do it and make it a 914.6, then you got to put the CBX motor in there, right? Near. Small block forward, 408 for turbo motor with log style. Oh, log style manifolds for turbo. Yeah, that's fine. Considering something small for the 914 turbo Honda, that would be good. Subaru seems to be unreliable from the factory roll. A Cobalt, maybe. Yeah, I think I would go with Hondas. The problem that you'll run in with like B series and K series Hondas is that they're reverse rotation. So that may present maybe a problem. An LS should fit in I mean, I've seen small block Chevys in them, so shouldn't an LS fit there too? The only problem I think you have with V8s like that have torque is I don't know. I think you're pretty expensive on a transaxle for it, right? Or a transmission. Can I make 450 on a 347 with stock ported heads, E303, and a single turbo? Yeah, with a single turbo, you can make whatever power you want. And a 3076 would support 450. 450 flywheel, is that what you're talking about? Or 450 the tire? If you're going to do 450 at the tire on 347, I would put a bigger turbo on it. How do you know when an engine will be knocking? Because I've been running them on the dyno for 30 years, and so I know how much timing they'll take. And we also do things that make it so that it doesn't detonate. On any kind of boosted thing, we run more octane. We run the motor cold. We run an intercooler. On the NA stuff, we run it cold enough to where we can run maximum timing on it. As much timing as the motor wants to make maximum power and still not have a detonate. If you run a motor at 130 degrees and run good cold air going to it, it's a lot more tolerant for detonation on 91 octane. Some of the Goldwings had a 1.8 liter flat six. Tony put an LS in one. Okay. Seen V8s and 914s. Yeah, I have swap books from Hot Rod that have those. 410 stroker has a single plane intake, long tube headers, Renegade 185s, 224 cam, running with a sniper. Oh, the head's too small. Probably not for that camshaft. It's not going to make, I don't know if you were asking if you could make 550 horsepower. It's not going to do that with that camshaft. Put a North Star in it. What's better, a 2.5 inch log or a 3 inch log on a 408? I don't think you're going to run into a problem with either one of those. If you could fit a 3 inch, it will be fine. Reverse rotation, I wouldn't have thought that. Maybe rotate the transaxle. It might. I don't know. You have to figure out if that's going to work. But yeah, the B series and the K series spin backwards. Subarus aren't unreliable. Tons of them still around. Any ones have head gasket issues. Pretty easy to replace. Make a theoretical, properly built North Star. That'd be a big one. 914 engine spin the right way. Ours is 130 degrees to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Boosted Subarus tend to push out the skinny rod bearings. And LS should be able to run backwards. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's mandatory. Do they make marine, like reverse rotation marine versions of the LS? I don't remember seeing anything like that. And I've seen it in a lot of other stuff. Your typical small block Chevys and Dodges and things like that. I've seen those. And the FEs, I remember seeing those as reverse rotation. How's your pole doing? Is a head swap that adds 100 horsepower worth the $2,000 price of the heads? 73% saying yes. Okay, we're going to stop at 73.27. Does anybody sell a simple knock sensor for an aftermarket application to alert you that you're in a bad situation? There are aftermarket knock sensor setups. On any of the Porsches, they turn the transaxle upside down and run it that way. The top vent becomes the drain plug. Okay. Wait till they try to find out what's the transmission for the turbos on those. It's like a G30 or something like that, a G50 or G60 or something. Where do they find out how much those cost? That was my thinking. Marine was where LS should turn up quickly. Had a twin turbo Porsche drift all the way around me at the red light. Couldn't even be mad because it was awesome. Yeah, how do you fault a guy for like being cool? How do you can't. And a turbo Porsche, you don't see that too much in the drift arena. Drifting. G5050 would set you back 30 grand. Yeah, that's no. All I want is the transmission. I don't want the whole car. No, that's not the whole car. Yeah, that's a lot. Trying to convert to EFI. What would success? Sniper 2 or kill shot 2? I don't know about a kill shot. I don't know what that is. So I'd have to get the Guide Boss's machine to run that cam on the Gen 6. Well, you'd have to set up the retainer to seal clearance to run that much lift. What I think is going to happen is a 248-degree duration cam, the valve's going to hit the piston. It was awesome. I just wanted to meet him to tell him it was. Yeah, I know that. I know. I give guys salute all the time. I'm like, dude, that's totally cool. Anyone else think people on Marketplace wanting $900 for GT40P heads are on? Yeah, they are on crack, I think. Got a dip. All right, man. We'll see you. The unicorn trans for the rear wheels was $21,000. I think that front was another $15,000. Kill shot's basically a Vivor Holly. Okay. I don't have any experience with that. What brand do you suggest to convert to EFI? I don't know what you're trying to do, and I'm the wrong guy to ask about that because I'm not a tuner. The EFI stuff that I've used is Holly, Fast, MS3 Pro, and then Haltech. But what I do with them doesn't show what the capability is of any of those. I mean, I just go here, click. It has more fuel or it has less fuel. Click. It has more timing, it has less timing. And that's all I'm doing. I mean, I'm tuning for the right air, fuel, and timing so it makes the most power that it can under wide open throttle. That's very, very easy. But that's not what they do. That's not that I'm not showcasing all the things that they're capable of. Is there a cam that you would suggest that would get me in the 550, 575 mark on the 410 stroker? Well, if you go look at the 408 Ford that we did and the 2 cams that I ran on that should give you an idea. I'll have to check back with comp, though I thought it sounded a little too good to be true to run that big of a cam. Yeah, I don't think that fits. If you could, would you use Motec? If I was building a dedicated race motor, I might go to that, but that's really, really expensive. And like I said, I don't use any of the things that make the Motec a Motec. When Hewlett makes a replacement transaxle that is half the price of a replacement, you know you're in a different league. Yeah. Notifications on your live stream don't work most of the time, and most of your videos can't be hyped. I don't know what that means. What do you mean hyped? Is there something that I need to click to change that? I'm tuning a stock ECU. That also works. Those TBI EFI kits needed to be good daily drivers. They weren't intended to make maximum horsepower. I've not heard any of them are great at that. Yeah, I wouldn't. If I had a carbureted small block, I wouldn't put a 4-hole throttle body on it. I wouldn't replace the carburetor with them. I want a Porsche Flat 6 and a Carmen Ghia. I remember seeing way back before they were $1 billion. I saw a VW bus that a guy had put swap Porsche stuff into the back of it. And so I thought, oh, that's really cool. I mean, I don't know that I want to go really fast in a bus, but still cool. Running a 6-liter with a chopper copper cam, BS Racing 7875. I'm fighting intake temperatures. Or do you not have it intercooled? And how high are you turning it up to? Are you getting near the end of the 7875? Because that's where we start running into problems. Intercooler, not maxing out the turbo. Remember back in the day, there were VR6 swaps for the Beetle. Yeah, that is cool. Not sure if that's still a thing. I don't know how inexpensive the VR6 stuff is. I liked reading about that in the European car magazine about guys hopping those things up. You run 2. We don't have 2 blow-off valves. When I run a single turbo on the engine dyno, we run 2 wastegates and 1 blow-off valve, regardless of what single turbo I put on there. That's just how the Y pipe is set up. And we have a harder time controlling boost on the engine dyno because of the stationary load. And we're controlling the rate of acceleration on the dyno. So it seems to have more trouble controlling the boost. We don't have that trouble out on the chassis dyno or on the road. So we run like our turbo kit that we did that's on Jimmy's Tahoe has a single 50 millimeter wastegate and a single 50 or 60 millimeter blow-off valve. And it controls the boost perfectly. On a G42, on the 3584, and on the new one, the new turbos that we're going to test, it has no trouble doing that. There are a lot of VW buses with 2.2-liter Porsche flat sixes. I watched a video of one outrunning an old Ferrari. That is cool. Every cam is a turbo cam. Could I just get a Corsair Spider engine? A Corvair one? Corsair would be different. That's a lot. This is worth it on this V12 from the 90s. I don't know if it's going to be worth it if you don't have cams to go with that. Remember the buses that your feet are just behind the bumper? Yeah. Yeah, so you can do wheelies, man. I'm really into the Corvairs. Nice. Running a sheet metal intake. I think that's my problem with heat. Are you running an intercooler is my question. And then also, are you running pump gas? So you have retarded timing on it. The sheet metal intake is not going to impart, at wide open throttle under boost, the sheet metal intake manifold is not going to impart heated charge air. Because if you're running boost, the air going into that manifold, if it's not intercooled, is already the air coming out of the turbo is going to be hotter than the sheet metal manifold is. Hyping your videos would help you pop up in more suggested feeds on YouTube. It put you into the leaderboard. I don't know how I hype them. I don't know what that is. Tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more. How is it on Marketplace for parts? I'm just wanting to run a reliable 351 Windsor with 380 horsepower and a pickup. GT40 heads. You should be able to go to the wrecking yard and get GT40P heads. You should be able to go get those all day long. There's a bunch of Explorers out there. I'm going to use the LS48 V8 platform swap for my 84 first gen S10 to all-wheel drive setup. Yeah, that's a good motor. 1200 BMW sounded like a bad idea right now. What is the horsepower rating on a stock small block Ford 302 connecting around at what RPM can it be good to? Well, we've made a lot of power on turbo stuff with those on stock bottom ends. And I don't know about RPM. I don't have a feel for that question. We've done way more than 400 horsepower in stock ones. My 63 Bug done wheelies and all the gears. Nice. Is Victor single plane better for boosting a high rem? I don't think so. Of course, they're at 18 cylinders. That was a lot. And fairly expensive to rebuild, I would imagine. Got 1 more minute. Running an intercooler. So why are your temperatures hot then? Is the intercooler too small? Is it not working? What's going on? I meant Corvair. No, we know. We got that. Corsair is just fun to talk about because we don't. I mean, how often does that come up in conversation? Dude, you got a Corsair? Yeah. You sell a t-shirt that mentions ring gap? I don't. We have, let's see, this one is Ron Cam. Tuner, maybe. I don't know. I don't. Are you okay? Are you getting cold air to the turbo, or are you just breathing underhood air? Because if you're breathing underhood air, that's a terrible start. That could be 200 degrees going into the turbo. What's your favorite 1,000 horsepower setup? I don't have one. YouTube viewers are allowed to hike at least 3 videos per week. It's designed to boost creators' viewership. Okay. So what would stop me from it being hyped? Why is it not hypeable? It makes me wonder why. I want to be all the hype. Obviously, there's more things I have to learn. I'm looking. Moderation activity? No. No moderators. I don't have moderators. Just me. But on that note, it is time to go. I'll take a look, Kurt. I'll take a look and see if there's anything in the settings or anything that I can do. I've seen the whole button on some videos, but not most. Frabers used to have the button, but haven't lately. I like to wear my Ron Cam shirt to the racetrack. I was at the Air Museum and look at the Harrier jet. Nice. Guy beside me looking, had a Boeing shirt. Got to talk to him. He helped design the Harrier. Nice. Isn't that the jet that Arnold Schwarzenegger used in his movie? And on that note, it is time to go.